The War Council chamber aboard the Dawnbreaker hummed with anticipation. Fleet Admiral Corven studied the holographic display showing 5 massive battleships arranged in perfect formation at the edge of human territory. Each vessel stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern, their hulls adorned with the golden emblems of conquest that marked every successful campaign in Drouth history. 17 civilizations have knelt before these ships, Corven announced to the assembled commanders. His scales rippled with pride as he gestured toward the display. 18 will join them within the week. Commander Yalish shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had served the Drouth Empire for 40 cycles, witnessed countless victories, but something about this felt different. The humans had only ventured into deep space 200 years ago. By galactic standards, they were infants, yet they had expanded faster than any species on record. The humans control 47 systems now, she said carefully. Their growth rate suggests advanced industrial capacity. Corven dismissed her concern with a wave. Numbers mean nothing against true power. Look at our fleet. The Star Render alone carries enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. We have 5 such vessels. What can these newcomers possibly field against us? The other commanders murmured agreement. The Dawnbreaker's tactical officer brought up images of human colonies, their modest defensive stations, their simple cargo vessels. Everything looked functional, efficient, utterly unimpressive compared to Drouth magnificence. Their largest confirmed warship measures 800 meters, the officer reported. Our intelligence suggests they favor smaller, faster vessels, patrol craft mostly. Cowards, spat General Harvek from the Void Hammer. They scatter their forces because they fear direct confrontation. This will be the easiest conquest in our history. Corven activated the communications array. Prepare the ultimatum, standard terms. They surrender all territory beyond their home system, provide 20% of their industrial output as tribute, and submit to Drouth governance. They have 48 hours to comply. Yalish watched as the message transmitted toward the nearest human colony. She had read the intelligence reports more carefully than the others. The humans had no grand temples to their warriors, no monuments celebrating glorious battles. Their historical records showed something else entirely, 3,000 years of nearly constant warfare among themselves. They had refined killing into a science long before reaching the stars. Admiral, she ventured, what if they refuse? Then we demonstrate why the Drouth Empire has ruled this sector for 6 centuries. Corven's eyes gleamed. These humans will learn what every other species has learned. Resistance is futile when facing true military might. The holographic display updated, showing the 5 battleships in their full glory. The Dawnbreaker, Corven's flagship, bristled with energy cannons capable of sustained bombardment. The Star Render carried the experimental Nova missiles that had reduced the Kelthian home world to rubble. The Void Hammer specialized in electronic warfare, able to blind enemy fleets before they could react. The Iron Eclipse housed 3,000 fighters, a swarm that could overwhelm any defense. And the Death's Herald, the newest addition, mounted the gravity disruptor that could tear ships apart at the molecular level. Against this armada, what could humanity possibly do? The answer came 30 hours later. Yalish was reviewing sensor data when the communications officer announced an incoming transmission from Earth's colonial administration. Put it through, Corven ordered, settling into his command throne with evident satisfaction. A human woman appeared on the screen. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. I am Director Helen Park of the Terran Colonial Defense Council. We have reviewed your demands. And your response? Corven leaned forward. We decline. Silence filled the bridge. Several officers looked at each other in disbelief. Corven's scales darkened with anger. You decline, he repeated slowly. Do you understand what you face? 5 battleships, each capable of reducing your colonies to ash. We offer you the mercy of survival through submission. Refuse, and we will take what we want from the wreckage of your civilization. Helen's expression never changed. We understand your position. However, we prefer a different arrangement. We are dispatching a vessel to discuss terms face to face. 1 ship, Harvick laughed. You send 1 ship to negotiate with an armada. Correct. She should arrive at your position in approximately 6 hours. Her captain has full authority to represent Earth's interests. The transmission ended. The bridge erupted in laughter and incredulous commentary. Only Yalish remained quiet, studying the brief glimpse she had gotten of the human director. There had been no fear in those eyes, no desperation, just calm calculation. "They mock us," Corvin snarled. "One ship. They send one ship as if this were a trade discussion, not a war council." "Perhaps they truly do not understand," suggested the tactical officer. "They are young, inexperienced in galactic politics." Yalish pulled up the sensor schedules. "We should at least scan this vessel when it arrives, learn what we can about their technology." "Unnecessary," Corvin declared. "But very well. When their little ship arrives, we will give them one final chance to surrender. When they refuse, we destroy them as an example. Then we proceed to their colonies and show them the price of defiance." The fleet maintained its position, weapons armed, crews ready. 6 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Officers made wagers on whether the human ship would even arrive or if Earth would come to its senses and transmit a surrender. Then the sensors registered an anomaly. A ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge, exactly where Helen Park had predicted. The tactical officer's display flashed with data. "Contact confirmed. Single vessel approaching at standard diplomatic speed." On screen, Corvin commanded. The view screen shifted, showing the vast darkness of space and 5 pinpricks of light representing the Drouth battleships. And there, small enough to miss on first glance, a sleek vessel began its approach. The quiet storm had arrived. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before the projection showing 5 Drouth battleships, each one a monument to intimidation. Around the conference table, Earth's Defense Council sat in contemplative silence. The ultimatum had been clear: submit or face annihilation. "Their tactics haven't evolved in 200 years, Rebecca said, manipulating the hologram to highlight weapon placements on each vessel. "Same formation they used against the Kelthians, same threat protocol they delivered to the V-Rin. They're following a script." General Park examined the data streaming across his tablet. "Our intelligence confirms they've conquered 17 species using variations of this exact approach. Show overwhelming force, demand immediate submission, destroy anyone who resists." "They expect us to panic," added Director Chen from Colonial Affairs. "Every species they've encountered either surrendered immediately or fought back with emotion-driven tactics. Pride, rage, desperation." Rebecca nodded, "Which is why we're going to do neither." She pulled up additional files, surveillance data collected over the past 3 years through careful observation. The Drouth Empire broadcast its victories across public channels, celebrating each conquest. They had unknowingly provided Earth with a comprehensive library of their capabilities, their limitations, their patterns. "Look at this," Rebecca highlighted a battle sequence. "The V-Rin resistance sent everything they had, hundreds of ships all attacking simultaneously. The Drouth formation absorbed the assault, then systematically eliminated each vessel. Total V-Rin casualties, 12,000 ships." "Drouth losses?" someone asked. 47 fighters, no capital ships damaged." Rebecca let that sink in. "But watch what happens when a smaller V-Rin force attempted hit-and-run tactics here." She played another sequence. "The battleships can't track fast-moving targets effectively. Their sensors are designed to handle large formations, not individual agile craft. 3 V-Rin destroyers disabled the Star Render's portside weapons before retreating." General Park leaned forward. "You're suggesting we send multiple fast-attack vessels?" "No," Rebecca closed the files. "I'm suggesting we send one ship to demonstrate what they're actually facing." The room erupted in protests. Director Wei spoke over the others. "One ship against 5 battleships is suicide. Even if we could damage one, they'd obliterate us." "They would," Rebecca agreed, "if we sent a conventional warship, if we played by their rules." She pulled up a new schematic. "This is the Quiet Storm, frigate class, commissioned 6 months ago, 412 meters, crew of 87. "That's a patrol vessel," someone objected. "Officially, yes." Rebecca expanded the schematic, revealing internal systems that made several council members sit straighter. "Unofficially, she's the first vessel equipped with the Helios drive system, full adaptive shielding and Neuralink targeting arrays." General Park studied the specifications with growing interest. "The Helios drive, the one from the Skunk Works project we weren't supposed to know about." "The same." Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. Traditional faster-than-light drives need time to charge between jumps. The Helios system can execute micro-jumps every 3 seconds. It makes the ship effectively untouchable in combat situations. Director Chen was reading through the shield specifications. This adaptive shielding, it redistributes energy based on incoming fire. Better, it predicts incoming fire using the Neuralink targeting array and shifts protection before weapons even discharge. The same system that aims our weapons is analyzing enemy weapon positions, calculating firing solutions, and adjusting defenses in real time. One ship with experimental technology against a proven armada, Director Wei said slowly. If it fails, we've revealed our capabilities and lost any element of surprise. If it succeeds, General Park countered, we've sent a message to every species watching. The Drouth aren't invincible. Earth won't be intimidated. Rebecca pulled up personnel files. Captain David Cross commands the Quiet Storm, Mars Rebellion veteran decorated for tactical innovation under fire. His crew has been training with the new systems for 6 months. They're ready. The vote took 15 minutes. When it concluded, Rebecca opened a secure channel. 3 light seconds away, David Cross received his orders aboard the Quiet Storm. Diplomatic mission, David read aloud to his first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Grant. Proceed to Drouth fleet position. Negotiate terms. Demonstrate Earth's defensive capabilities if negotiations fail. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Demonstrate capabilities. That's polite phrasing for show them what we can do without technically starting a war. Politics. David brought up the tactical data on the 5 battleships. How's the crew? Excited. Engineering reports the Helios drive is running at peak efficiency. Weapons wants to know if they can finally test the rail guns against something bigger than asteroids. SHIELD's team has been running simulations non-stop. David studied the battleship formations. He had spent the last week reviewing every recorded Drouth engagement, looking for patterns, weaknesses, predictable behaviors. The Empire's military doctrine prioritized intimidation and overwhelming force. They won through fear as much as firepower, which meant they had forgotten how to fight an enemy that wouldn't be intimidated. Plot a course, he ordered. Standard approach, nothing aggressive. We're diplomats until they decide otherwise. The Quiet Storm's crew moved through pre-flight with practiced efficiency. No nervous energy, no bravado. They had trained for this scenario dozens of times. Engineer Rodriguez fine-tuned the Helios drive. Weapons Officer Kim ran final checks on the railgun arrays. SHIELD technician Anderson synchronized the adaptive systems with the Neuralink network. In the mess hall, Private Williams asked Corporal Jackson what he thought would happen. Honestly, Jackson finished his coffee. I think those Drouth commanders are about to have the worst day of their careers. 6 hours later, the Quiet Storm dropped into normal space at the edge of the system. Sensors immediately painted the 5 battleships, exactly where intelligence had predicted. David sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display with calm focus. They're scanning us, Sarah reported. Multiple active sweeps. They seem confused by our power signatures. Let them look, David said. Helm, standard diplomatic approach. Comms, open a channel when we're in range. The Quiet Storm glided forward, a small, sleek vessel approaching 5 giants. On the Dawn Breaker, Corvin and his commanders watched with contempt and growing certainty. The humans had sent a lamb to negotiate with lions. They had no idea what was coming. The tactical display aboard the Dawn Breaker showed a vessel so small it barely registered as a threat. 400 meters of sleek metal, approaching 5 kilometers of Drouth battle superiority. Commander Yalish studied the sensor returns with growing unease. The power readings don't match the ship's size, she reported to Admiral Corvan. We're detecting energy signatures that suggest either significant shielding or an unusually efficient reactor. Corvan waved dismissively. Humans and their toys, probably some experimental engine they're proud of. It changes nothing. The Quiet Storm continued its approach, maintaining a steady velocity that suggested neither fear nor aggression. On the human vessel's bridge, Captain David Cross watched the 5 battleships grow larger on the view screen. Weapons lock from all 5 ships, Sarah reported. Dawn Breaker has 17 targeting systems trained on us. The others aren't far behind. Expected, David said calmly. They want us to flinch. Comms, open a channel. The communication. Link established, and Corven's scaled face filled the screen. Behind him, the Dawnbreaker's bridge bustled with activity as dozens of Drouth officers monitored the encounter. I am Fleet Admiral Corven of the Drouth Empire. You command the vessel responding to our ultimatum. Captain David Cross, Terran Colonial Defense Force. I'm authorized to discuss your territorial demands. Corven's eyes narrowed. There is nothing to discuss. You have one option, unconditional surrender. Your colonies, your resources, your technology all become property of the Empire. Refuse, and we will take them by force. David appeared to consider this. I appreciate the clarity. However, Earth's position is that our colonies remain under our governance. We're willing to establish trade agreements, cultural exchanges, even mutual defense pacts, but we won't submit to external rule. The bridge of the Dawnbreaker filled with harsh laughter. General Harveck's voice came through the channel. You negotiate as if you have leverage. One tiny ship against our armada. What possible defense do you imagine you possess? A fair question, David acknowledged. Let me ask one in return. In your 17 previous conquests, did any of those civilizations have time to study your tactics, to analyze your formations, your weapon capabilities, your strategic patterns? The laughter died. Corven leaned forward. You claim to have studied us. For 3 years, David confirmed. Every public broadcast of your victories, every engagement you've celebrated, you've been very generous with tactical information. Yalish felt her scales tighten. She had suggested limiting public broadcasts of military operations, but the Council had overruled her. Victory celebrations were important for Imperial morale. Study all you wish, Corven snarled. Knowledge cannot overcome such disparity in force. This is your final opportunity. Surrender or be destroyed. David's expression remained neutral. Then I'm afraid we have nothing further to discuss. Earth's answer is no. So be it. Corven cut the transmission and addressed his weapons officers. All ships target the human vessel. Fire on my command. The 5 battleships synchronized their targeting systems. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon focused on one frigate-sized ship. Corven savored the moment, imagining how quickly this defiant human would learn his error. Fire. 17. Energy beams lanced through space from the Dawnbreaker alone. The other 4 battleships added their own devastating salvos. The combined assault would have obliterated any conventional vessel instantly. The sensor officer stared at her display in disbelief. Target is gone. Destroyed, Corven demanded. No, Admiral, gone. Disappeared from sensors 3 seconds before impact. I'm detecting a spatial distortion signature consistent with faster-than-light transition, but the energy readings are wrong. Too small, too fast. Find that ship, Corven roared. The quiet storm materialized 200 kilometers from its previous position, completely undamaged. On the human bridge, Engineer Rodriguez grinned at his console. Helios drive performing perfectly. Microjump executed in 2.7 seconds. They're going to be confused, Sarah noted, watching the Drouth battleship scramble to reacquire their target. That wasn't standard faster-than-light travel. Let's educate them, David said. Weapons target the Dawnbreaker's forward sensor array. Single rail gun round, fire when ready. The rail gun accelerated a tungsten penetrator to a fraction of light speed. The projectile crossed the distance in under a second and punched through the Dawnbreaker's primary sensor cluster, shredding the delicate equipment and leaving the flagship partially blind. Alarms shrieked across the Drouth vessel. Yalish watched her tactical display dissolve into static. Forward sensors destroyed, switching to secondary arrays. How? Corven demanded. They fired one shot and hit precisely. The round was kinetic, not energy-based, his tactical officer reported. Our shields are calibrated for energy weapons. Physical projectiles at that velocity pass through with minimal resistance. The quiet storm moved again, another micro-jump that placed it above the star render. This time, 3 rail gun rounds destroyed communication arrays along the massive battleship's spine. All ships saturate the area with fire, Harveck ordered from the Void Hammer. It can't dodge everything. 5 battleships unleashed a storm of energy beams, creating an overlapping kill zone that should have caught any vessel. The Quiet Storm's Neuralink targeting system calculated firing solutions faster than biological minds could process. The ship jumped twice in 5 seconds, appearing in gaps between the weapon streams that existed. For barely a heartbeat. Impossible, Corvan whispered. Nothing moves that fast. On the Iron Eclipse, fighter crews scrambled to their craft. 3,000 small attack ships launched, swarming toward the human vessel like angry insects. David watched the cloud of fighters approaching on his tactical display. Well, he said to Sarah, they're adapting. Weapons switch to cluster munitions. Let's show them why fighters need proper coordination. The Quiet Storm released a spread of smart mines that detonated in calculated patterns, creating electromagnetic pulses that fried fighter control systems. Hundreds of small craft tumbled out of formation, their pilots struggling with dead instruments. The remaining fighters pressed their attack, but the human ship danced through their fire like wind through branches. Every movement was precise, economical, perfectly timed. And with each pass, railgun rounds found critical systems on the battleships: weapons control centers, shield generators, engine clusters. Yalish watched her tactical display update as damage reports flooded in from all 5 vessels. They had fired thousands of shots. Not one had touched the human ship. Admiral, she said quietly, we need to reconsider our position. Corvan's scales had turned pale. What manner of devils are these humans? Chaos consumed the Drouth fleet. 3 battleships drifted with critical systems offline. The Iron Eclipse's fighter wing was scattered and disorganized. Only the Void Hammer and Death's Herald maintained combat effectiveness, and their commanders knew that status could change in seconds. General Harbeck stared at his tactical display with growing horror. The human ship is using our own formations against us. When we concentrate fire, it jumps to areas we've left exposed. When we spread out, it picks us apart one system at a time. Retreat, Corvan commanded, his voice hollow. All ships execute emergency faster-than-light transition. Commander Yalish checked her systems. Admiral, we've lost our primary navigation array. Secondary systems are barely functional. An unplanned jump could scatter the fleet across a dozen systems. Better scattered than destroyed, Corvan shot back. Initiate jump sequence. The Void Hammer and Death's Herald began charging their faster-than-light drives. Energy built in their massive engines, space around them beginning to distort. On the Quiet Storm, Lieutenant Sarah Grant detected the power surge. 2 ships preparing to jump, she reported. David Cross considered his options. His orders were to demonstrate Earth's capabilities, not to provoke total war. But allowing the Drouth to escape with only partial damage would leave them dangerous. They needed to understand completely what they faced. Helm intercept course for the Death's Herald. Weapons target their faster-than-light drive assembly. Precision strike disable only. The Quiet Storm blinked across space, materializing directly behind the Death's Herald. Railgun rounds struck the exposed drive section with surgical accuracy. The massive engines flared, stuttered, and went dark. The ship hung motionless, its escape route severed. Death's Herald reporting drive failure, Yalish announced. They're dead in space. The Void Hammer completed its jump sequence and vanished, leaving its sister ships behind. Corvan slammed his fist against his command throne. 4 battleships, the pride of the Drouth Empire, disabled by a single human vessel in less than 20 minutes. Open a channel to the human ship, he said quietly. David's face appeared on the view screen. He looked neither triumphant nor angry, just professional. Admiral Corvan. What are your terms? The words tasted like poison, but Corvan forced them out. The same terms we offered originally, David replied. Your fleet withdraws from human territory. We establish communication protocols for future contact. No tribute, no surrender, no submission. You could destroy us, Corvan said. Why offer mercy? Because destruction isn't our goal. We want to be left alone to develop peacefully. Your empire chose to threaten that peace. We've demonstrated that threatening us is unprofitable. That's the extent of our interest in this situation. Yalish studied the human captain's face. There was no cruelty there, no desire for vengeance. Just calm calculation and a willingness to enforce boundaries. It reminded her of how predators in nature didn't kill for sport, only for food or protection. You planned this entire engagement, she said, drawing David's attention. From the moment you received our ultimatum. We planned for multiple scenarios, David confirmed. This was actually one of the less complicated ones. Your tactical doctrine is very consistent. Consistent, Corvan repeated bitterly. You mean predictable. Predictability is useful in diplomacy, David said. Less so in warfare. Your empire has confused intimidation with strategy. Against opponents who panic or lack technical sophistication, that works. Against opponents who study, prepare, and refuse to be frightened, it's a liability. General Harveck's voice came through from the Void Hammer, which had apparently not jumped far. This isn't over, human. You've defeated one fleet. The Empire has hundreds of ships. We will return in force. You're welcome to try, David said evenly. But before you do, consider what you've learned today. The Quiet Storm is a patrol frigate, a standard vessel we deploy for routine system security. You're currently disabled by what we consider a light combatant. The implications settled over the Drouth commanders like a heavy blanket. If this was a standard vessel, what were Earth's actual warships capable of? You're bluffing, Harveck insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Perhaps, David allowed. There's one way to find out. Send your hundreds of ships. We'll demonstrate whether I'm bluffing or not, but consider the cost. You came here expecting easy conquest. Instead, you've lost 4 battleships to a single frigate without inflicting any damage in return. How many ships are you willing to sacrifice to test our defenses? Silence stretched across the communication channel. Corvan looked at Yalish, who shook her head slightly. They had no good options. Pride demanded they seek revenge. Survival suggested retreat and reassessment. I need time, Corvan finally said, to consult with the Imperial Council, to repair our ships and recover our forces. Understood, David replied. You have 48 hours to withdraw your vessels from this system. After that, we'll consider any Drouth military presence in human territory an act of war. Your damaged ships will be given safe passage to the border. And if we refuse? David's expression didn't change. Then we'll disable your ships permanently and you'll drift here until your empire comes to collect you. Your choice. Corvan terminated the connection. Around him, damage reports continued to flow in. The Dawnbreaker alone would need 3 months of repairs. The Star Render's weapon systems were completely destroyed. The Iron Eclipse had lost 60% of its fighter complement. The Death's Herald couldn't even maneuver. Order the fleet to begin. Emergency repairs, he commanded. Prioritize mobility over weapons. We need to be able to leave this cursed system. Yalish coordinated the repair efforts while monitoring the human ship. It maintained a defensive position, neither threatening nor retreating, professional, disciplined, everything the Drouth fleet had failed to be. Commander, one of her officers called out, we're receiving a narrow-beam transmission from the human vessel. It's addressed to you personally. Yalish opened the private channel. Captain Cross appeared on her screen. Commander Yalish, our intelligence suggests you're the most strategically minded officer in this fleet. I wanted to offer you some advice. The galaxy is changing. Species are developing technologies faster, sharing information more freely. The old model of conquest through intimidation is becoming obsolete. Your empire can adapt or become irrelevant. Why tell me this? Yalish asked. Because someone in your command structure needs to understand what today meant. This wasn't a battle. It was an education. What you do with that education determines whether our next meeting is peaceful or not. The transmission ended. Yalish sat in silence, considering his words while her crew worked frantically to restore their crippled ship. 47 hours after the engagement, the 4 disabled Drouth battleships limped toward the border of human space. The Void Hammer, the only vessel to escape intact, escorted them at a distance. Behind them, the Quiet Storm maintained a respectful but watchful presence, ensuring their departure. Admiral Corvan sat in his darkened quarters aboard the Dawnbreaker, reviewing combat footage for the 100th time. Every angle showed the same story. A small human vessel moving with impossible precision, striking with surgical accuracy, vanishing before retaliation could land. His most advanced tactical computers couldn't predict where the ship would appear next. Admiral, Yalish's voice came through the intercom. We're approaching the border. The human vessel is holding position. I believe they'll let us cross without incident. Good, Corvan said flatly. He had already composed his report to the Imperial Council. 4 battleships disabled, 1 fled, 0 enemy casualties. It was the worst defeat the Drouth Empire had suffered in 200 years. His career was over, possibly his life, depending on how the Council reacted. "Sir, there's something else." Yalish's tone carried unusual hesitation. "I've been analyzing the engagement data. The human ship never fired to kill. Every shot was calculated to disable, not destroy. They could have vaporized us a dozen times over." "I'm aware," Corvin said bitterly. "They were making a point." "More than that," Yalish insisted. "They were offering a choice. Submit or be annihilated is what we told them. Their response was, resist and be taught a lesson. They want us to learn, not die." Corvin considered this. In his decades of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that fought with such restraint. The Drouth way was total victory or total defeat. This human approach, this measured application of force, felt alien in more ways than one. "What lesson do you think they're teaching?" he asked. "That power comes in different forms," Yalish replied. "We measure strength in ship size, weapon counts, conquered territories. They measure it in efficiency, precision, adaptability. We brought overwhelming force. They brought overwhelming competence." Across the void, aboard the Quiet Storm, Captain David Cross was having a similar conversation with his first officer. Lieutenant Sarah Grant reviewed the engagement logs with satisfaction. "0 shots fired at crew sections," she noted. "We disabled their weapons, engines, sensors, communication, left life support and medical facilities completely intact. By the book." "The book exists for a reason," David said. "We're not trying to exterminate the Drouth. We're teaching them that aggression against Earth has consequences beyond their acceptable loss calculations." "Think they learned?" David pulled up a separate display showing intelligence reports. "Their empire spans 40 systems. They have a standing military of 800 capital ships. We just fought 5 of them. What we did here will spread throughout their command structure, and they'll have to decide how to respond." "More ships," Sarah suggested. "Overwhelming force to compensate for our tactical advantages." "Maybe," David agreed. "Or they'll adapt, study us the way we studied them, develop countermeasures, improve their doctrine. That's actually the outcome we want." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "We want them to become better at fighting us." "We want them to become better at thinking," David corrected. "Right now, they're a hammer looking for nails, everything. Looks like something to hit. If they start analyzing, questioning, adapting, they become a more sophisticated opponent, which means they're more likely to choose negotiation over violence." "That's optimistic." "That's human history," David countered. "We spent 3,000 years fighting each other. Every war taught us something. Every defeat forced innovation. Eventually, we learned that cooperation produces better results than conquest. The Drouth can learn the same thing, but only if someone survives to teach the lesson." The communication panel chimed. Admiral Rebecca Stone's face appeared on the screen, transmitting from Earth. "Captain Cross, excellent work. You're authorized to return to base once the Drouth fleet crosses the border." "Understood, Admiral. What's the official response if they return with reinforcements?" Rebecca's expression hardened slightly. "Then we deploy actual warships and demonstrate that the Quiet Storm really was just a patrol frigate. The Council is already preparing contingencies, but intelligence suggests internal debate within the Drouth Empire. Some factions want revenge, others want to understand what happened. We're hoping the pragmatists win." "And if they don't?" "Then we fight a real war and we win it decisively enough that the entire galaxy understands Earth's position. No conquest, no submission, but also no unprovoked aggression. We defend, we don't invade." The transmission ended. David turned back to the view screen, watching the Drouth battleships disappear across the border. Sarah stood beside him, quiet for a long moment. "Do you think we'll see them again?" she asked. "Definitely," David said. "The question is whether they'll come as enemies or something else." 12 light-years away, Commander Yalish stood in the Dawn Breaker's observation deck, watching stars slide past as the battered fleet made its slow way home. She had spent hours reviewing every second of the engagement, analyzing the human vessel's movements, its decision patterns, its restraint. A junior officer approached hesitantly. "Commander, the crew is talking. Rumors about the human ship, about their capabilities. Some say we should have fought to the death rather than accept defeat." Those who say that weren't on the bridge watching helplessly as a single ship dismantled our fleet, Yalish replied. Death is easy. Learning is hard. The humans gave us the harder path. What will the council decide? I don't know, Yalish admitted. But I know what I'll recommend. We need to study these humans, understand their history, their culture, their strategic thinking. They didn't become this capable by accident. They evolved through conflict, through adaptation, through learning from mistakes. If the Empire continues using the same tactics we've relied on for centuries, we'll face the same result: defeat. The officer looked shocked. Commander, that sounds like you're advocating we adopt human methods. I'm advocating we adopt intelligence over arrogance, Yalish corrected. The Empire has grown comfortable. We've forgotten that comfortable civilizations become complacent civilizations. The humans just reminded us that the galaxy doesn't owe us dominance. We have to earn it, and right now, we haven't earned anything except a very expensive lesson. As the Drouth fleet limped home and the quiet storm turned back toward human space, neither side knew that dozens of other species had monitored the engagement. News was already spreading through the galactic community. The Drouth, unconquerable for 2 centuries, had been humbled by a species barely old enough to be noticed. Earth had announced its presence in the galaxy, not with threats or boasts, but with a simple demonstration. We can defend ourselves, we will defend ourselves, and we're far more capable than you assumed. The question now was whether the galaxy would learn from that demonstration, or whether humanity would need to teach the lesson again. 3 weeks after the engagement, the Galactic Council chambers filled with representatives from 47 species. The circular hall, built to accommodate wildly different biologies, hummed with translated conversations as delegates debated the matter that had consumed diplomatic channels across known space. Ambassador Talvin of the Murash Collective called the session to order. His species had maintained the council for 3 centuries, serving as neutral arbiters in disputes between starfaring civilizations. Today's agenda carried unusual weight. We gather to discuss the incident at the human colonial border, Talvin announced, his 4 vocal chambers creating harmonious tones that translation devices rendered into various languages. The Drouth Empire has filed a formal complaint alleging human aggression and deployment of prohibited weapons technology. Fleet Admiral Corvan rose from his designated space. 3 weeks had not softened the shame of defeat. He had been summoned to the capital, debriefed, interrogated, and ultimately assigned to present the Empire's case to the Council. The humans attacked without provocation, Corvan declared. Our fleet was conducting routine territorial assessment when a human warship engaged us with weapons technology that violates multiple treaties regarding warfare ethics. They deployed faster-than-light capable weapons, violated acceptable targeting protocols, and refused diplomatic resolution. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species had territorial disputes with the Drouth. Others feared Earth's apparent technological leap. The balance of galactic power suddenly felt unstable. The Council recognizes Earth's representative, Talvin said. Director Helen Park stood. She wore the same simple gray uniform she had worn when delivering Earth's refusal to Corvan's ultimatum. No decorations, no ceremonial additions, just practical clothing for practical purposes. Thank you, Ambassador Talvin. Earth appreciates this opportunity to address the Council. Helen activated a holographic display showing the 5 Drouth battleships positioned at the human border. 3 weeks ago, the Drouth Empire dispatched a military fleet to human territory and delivered an ultimatum: surrender all colonies and submit to external governance or face destruction. They provided 48 hours for compliance. She advanced the display. Earth's response was to send 1 patrol vessel to negotiate. The Drouth fleet, as Admiral Corvan has confirmed, responded by opening fire on that vessel. Our ship defended itself using non-lethal tactics designed to disable rather than destroy. The engagement ended with 0 casualties on either side, and the Drouth fleet withdrawing from human space. You call that non-lethal? Corvan interrupted. 4 battleships crippled, billions in damage. Crippled, not destroyed, Helen countered calmly. Every member of your 5 crews returned home safely. Our targeting systems are precise enough to distinguish between weapon systems and life support. We chose to make that distinction. You chose to open fire on a diplomatic vessel. Talvin raised a manipulator for silence. The Council recognizes the discrepancy in accounts. Admiral Corvin claims routine territorial assessment. Director Park claims military intimidation. Which interpretation is accurate? Perhaps I can provide context, a new voice spoke. Commander Yalish stood, drawing surprised looks from the Drouth delegation. She had not been authorized to speak. Commander Yalish, Corvin said warningly. Admiral, the Council deserves truth. Yalish faced the assembly. The fleet was not conducting routine assessment. We were deployed specifically to force human submission. This is standard Drouth protocol. We have used the same approach 17 times in the past 2 centuries. The Council's own records will confirm this pattern. Shocked silence filled the chamber. A Drouth officer contradicting her superior in open forum was unprecedented. Corvan's scales darkened with rage, but he remained silent. Yalish's statement was already recorded. The humans did exactly what Director Park described, Yalish continued. They sent one ship to negotiate. We fired first. Their vessel defended itself with remarkable restraint. I was monitoring the engagement personally. At no point did they target our crew sections, medical facilities, or life support systems. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. Helen nodded acknowledgement to Yalish, then addressed the Council again. Earth's position is simple. We will defend our territory and our people. We will not submit to external rule. We will not initiate aggression. But we will respond to aggression with appropriate force. The engagement with the Drouth fleet demonstrated our capability and our restraint. Your technology, interjected Representative Kalish of the Virin Confederacy. His species had been conquered by the Drouth 15 years earlier. The faster-than-light weapons, the targeting systems, these represent significant advancement beyond known capabilities. Humanity has been developing in relative isolation, Helen explained. We've focused our resources on defensive technology rather than expansion. Our history taught us the value of preparation. Your history, Talvin said carefully. The Council's information suggests humans engaged in significant internal conflict before achieving unified planetary governance. 3,000 years of it, Helen confirmed without shame. We fought wars across every continent using every weapon our ingenuity could devise. We learned, slowly and painfully, that cooperation produces better outcomes than conquest. Those lessons informed our approach to space exploration and defense. Another delegate spoke up. If one human patrol vessel can disable 5 Drouth battleships, what prevents Earth from using that capability for conquest? Our values prevent it, Helen said simply. We have no interest in ruling other species. We have extensive experience with the consequences of imperial ambition from our own history. It fails eventually, always at terrible cost. We prefer trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense agreements. Pretty words, Corvin muttered. Easy to claim peaceful intent when you possess overwhelming military superiority. Admiral, we don't possess overwhelming superiority, Helen corrected. We possess adequate defense. The Drouth Empire has 800 capital ships. Earth has perhaps 50 vessels of comparable capability, but our 50 ships are designed and crewed to defend our territory, not to conquer yours. That focus makes us very effective at our specific mission. Talvin considered the arguments presented. The Council will deliberate on this matter. However, preliminary assessment suggests both parties share responsibility. The Drouth Empire initiated contact with military intimidation. Earth responded with defensive action. No lives were lost. No territory was seized. This appears to be a containable incident if both sides exercise wisdom. Earth proposes formal diplomatic relations, Helen offered. We're willing to establish embassies, trade agreements, and communication protocols with any species interested in peaceful cooperation. We're also willing to share certain technologies related to food production, medical treatment, and environmental management. We keep our defensive technology proprietary, but we're generous with innovations that improve quality of life. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several smaller species, those who had feared Drouth expansion, saw opportunity in Earth's proposal. Others worried about upsetting the galactic balance of power. And a few, the more perceptive ones, recognized what Helen was really offering. Earth was announcing itself as a potential ally for peaceful species and a deterrent against aggressive ones. The demonstration with the Drouth fleet had been a message to everyone watching. We can fight. We will fight if necessary, but we prefer not to fight. As the council session continued, Yalish approached Helen during a recess. The two females, regarded each other with mutual assessment. "You ended my military career," Yalish said, "speaking against my admiral in open council." "You chose truth over loyalty to a failed strategy," Helen replied. "That takes courage." "Or stupidity." Yalish's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "What happens now?" "Now the galaxy adjusts to Earth being a player rather than a curiosity. Some will seek alliance, others will test our defenses, most will simply recalculate their strategic positions." Helen paused. "And you, Commander, what will you do?" "Learn," Yalish said. "Your captain told me the galaxy is changing. Species that adapt will thrive. Those that don't will become irrelevant. Perhaps the Drouth Empire can learn that lesson without learning it the hard way again." "Perhaps," Helen agreed, "and perhaps you'll be part of teaching that lesson." The council session resumed. Over the following hours, formal resolutions were drafted, debated, and eventually passed. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign power with full diplomatic rights. The Drouth Empire would withdraw all military vessels from human borders pending formal treaty negotiations, and the galactic community would establish new protocols for first contact situations. The age of casual conquest was ending, replaced by something more complex and more stable. Earth hadn't set out to change the galaxy, but by refusing to be another easy victim, by demonstrating capability without cruelty, humanity had shifted the balance. The Quiet Storm's brief engagement had accomplished more than disabling 5 battleships.